Welcome to Home Cooking with Foodland. We're really excited to be here. Of course, it's Wednesday, 5 o'clock, and we're looking forward to our class today. I'm hoping that you all, in your own sort of pandemic way, enjoyed the weekend, their 3-day weekend. And I hope everyone made flank steak with the creamy smashed cucumbers. And, you know, if you're the steak and potato guy, I hope that you tried maybe a salad, see what that's like, you know, change it up a little bit. And to that point, I thought it'd be fun to do another dish today. And coincidentally, it happens to be a salad, but I do think it's going to be delicious. And it's one of the things that I've really wanted to do for a long time. And we did a video on the website, a quick one before, but you know, when we do those, we try to make them quick. And I thought it'd be really fun to do this class because it's about Caesar dressing. And to me, you can buy bottled Caesar dressing, but if you make one the way I show you, you're never going to go back. And I wanted to take the time to show you how to make an emulsified dressing, so it takes a little longer than a 2-minute video, and we're going to focus on that. So if you think about, oh, Blackened Ahi Caesar Salad sounds simple, it kind of is, and it's one dish versus some of the others we've done a lot. But I really want to like get into I want to geek out on the dressing with you guys. So I hope we have fun with this. Please don't forget to use the question and answer function in the Zoom app. And of course, I really enjoy the conversation that we have and the questions that are asked. And like I said, I have some of the answers. I might not have all of them, but we have a lot of fact-finding people here. Well, not a lot, but a good team of fact-finders here that can help me. I don't want you to think that we're like not social distancing, that's why. So, well, we have a good team here and we can get you answers if I don't have them. So we'll get started here. And I thought the first thing we would do is get going with croutons. And I did one in a video before, but it's always worth revisiting because, you know, and I think the theme of the dishes that we try to do here are things that are simple, easy to do, things you can do at home. But if you do them right, they're just like, people like, oh my God, right? So delicious food doesn't have to be like exorbitantly fancy or complicated. So that's kind of the idea. So we have some baguettes here. They're great. I have fresh ones, but you know, the croutons are great for you buy some French bread, a baguette, day old or whatever, and you're like, I don't know if I want to eat that. That's like asking to be made croutons, right? So we're gonna get this thing going here, and you know, you can dice them up. I'm gonna kind of sort of pre-cut it a little bit to get this thing started. And I'm gonna, so I cut it in half. I'm gonna cut it into quarters. By the way, I'm not, you know, one of the places you can, if you need to get bread to make croutons and you need to buy bread, sometimes you can, you know, you can get it in our stores where we have a lot of extra bread in the morning and you can grab some of that for that. So I cut it into quarters the long way. And I'm gonna just, and this one, the last one I did, I diced them. But this one, I'm like, I want it to be rustic. I want to feel like I'm in there. So we're just gonna tear them up. And I have a big bowl. One of the things you might notice that when we cook together, you know, I'm always talking about size of pan, size of bowl. And the key thing is I think people tend to, you know, they buy smaller bowls, smaller pans, and they're like trying to like force all of this to work. And, you know, when you're cooking good food, food wants space. It wants to move around. So, you know, that's one of the things you want to think about, and you have to have the right amount of space for the cooking that you're doing. So I'm taking these, I'm tearing them up, throwing them inside. And you know, the key thing is basic to make croutons, you need bread, you need seasoning, herbs helps, cheese helps, you need fat, can be butter, can be oil, and that's kind of like you're toasting the bread to make it really yummy and delicious. By the way, I have my toaster oven and it's preheating at 350 degrees. Yes.
Is there a point when the bread is too dry, too hard to be used to make croutons? And can you refresh the bread that's really hard by misting it with water or microwaving it?
Great question. I'm just, before I forget I'm cutting the stems off of this garlic. Uh, Technically, I mean, the bread can dry out and dry out and dry out, and you're fine. You're totally fine. And the key thing is, it's about fat, right? So adding a good amount of fat to almost fry the bread and make it delicious. And the drier the bread is, and the fat you add, it might make it crispier. So and then it's cooking time, right? Because this is fresh bread, it's soft. I might have to bake it a little bit longer to crisp it and dry it out. But to me, I don't think that really matters. Um, so I wouldn't mist it. I wouldn't rehydrate it to make croutons. I mean, in restaurants, I would save all of the unused bread and we put it in the freezer, and so it's like dry already. It's just like freezer, like drying out in the freezer too, because of how the freezer pulls out moisture, right? And we were always fine with that. So I don't think that you really have to worry about that when you're making your croutons, as long as you just want to make sure that the bread's not all moldy and stuff like that. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and smash the garlic. You can chop it. I'm smashing, and then I'm gonna take it, chop it up real quick. If you have a garlic press, great. If you don't have a garlic press, go for the smash technique. One thing that I do sometimes too, and you might want to try this, I freeze garlic cloves too. If I have too much and they're not whole, and I feel like they're not gonna make it, I freeze them. And the cool thing about frozen garlic is it actually kind of melds out a little bit. And when you're working with frozen garlic, the process of freezing the garlic causes the cell structure to explode. And what it does by doing that, when you take that out and you smash it, it turns to a really fine kind of a paste. So that's something you might want to try and have fun with. Okay, garlic goes in, boom. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add some fat. I have both extra virgin and regular olive oil. I'm gonna go extra virgin on this. If you have regular, that's fine. Look at that. I'm not, but see, like, I always love showing people how to cook because when I do certain things, they're like, "Oh my God, look how much fat he put in there."
Is that the maikai oil?
That is the maikai oil. Good stuff. But I liberally put the fat in there because I'm trying to basically fry the bread and make it delicious. Seasoning, liberally seasoned, right? Pepper. Look at the coat the top.
And why is extra virgin olive oil so special?
Extra virgin olive oil is special in a lot of ways. First of all, I think it's considered typically first press, which means it's the first pressing of the olives, and that's where you're getting the best flavor extraction. Then they take it after they do the first press, they press it a couple more times to try to get as much oil as they can, and that's where your neutral oils come from. But it's special because it has really great flavor. And I guess that's a qualified question too, because just because it's extra virgin doesn't mean it's good. It does mean it's first press, but then you start to, it really matters like where the olives are coming from, how well they're harvested and where they're grown, etc. But high quality extra virgin olive oil is delicious because of its first press. It's very well, they're well taken care of olives, and then they're handled properly. So you have really interesting floral and aromas in the flavor of the oil besides just the oil itself. They're more delicate. They tend to be a lot more fragile, but that's what you're paying for in extra virgin olive oil. And what I'm looking for is some of the additional flavor components that are going to come with that versus a regular olive oil, which is very neutral and may not have very much flavor at all. Okay. So we got the fat in there. I'm going to put some herbs, and I have Italian parsley here that I'm going to use. Thyme could work, basil could work, but I like Italian parsley because it gives it a nice chlorophyll flavor, and it's really hearty. So I'm gonna just rough chop it.
Can you tell a difference in the taste between cold pressed oil?
Again, it depends on the cold pressed olive oil. In general, I would say typically a cold pressed olive oil should have more of the natural flavors in there because there are different methodologies for getting oil out. And so cold press really is a more gentle process, and it's designed to capture the flavor and be very less disruptive to the olive, to capture all of the delicate nuances in the olive. So in general, The answer is yes, it's better versus something that might be processed in another way and it's rougher on the olive. And so like even with wine, you're thinking about wine, right? There's different ways to get the juice out of the wine. And the more gentle you are on the grapes or the berries, in general, the more delicate nuances of the grape that you're going to capture. And so the more expensive the grapes are, the more limited they are, the tendency is you're going to treat them more gently. And the same thing follows through with the olives that you would use to make the olive oil. Okay, so we've got parsley, fat, seasoning. I think we're looking pretty good here. Oh, I know what I want to do. We talked about this before, but I have a piece of cheese here. This is parm. I've got it wrapped in a piece of paper towel so that I'm not touching it. I have some paper, saran wrap around it. I don't want to touch it because I don't want to contaminate it with my hand, but we'll throw some cheese in here too.
I have another oil question. Is domestic just as good as imported?
Loaded question. My answer every time you ask this question is going to be depends, right? Domestic isn't all, the imported isn't always better than domestic. I mean, here's an interesting thing. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of quote unquote Italian olive oil is actually from Spanish olives. And there's this huge industry that's out there. And, you know, the olives are bought in Spain, they're brought into Italy, and then they're processed, and now they're Italian, right? So I think the question really comes down to knowing sourcing the origin and the producer. So here's a great example. There's a company out there that's, I think it's California Olive Ranch, and they make olive oil. Amazing, amazing. But that's what they do, right? And then if you go to certain farmers markets in California or in other areas, they're little boutique companies that have olive orchards, and they make great olive oil. And interesting to that point, I can't remember exactly. I think it might have been Jordan Winery, but you know, some of these really great wineries have olive orchards, and they make olive oil too, and it's like really amazing. So the question really is about the producer, knowing the producers, knowing what they're doing, and taking that kind of interest. So I think that the inverse of that is like in Europe, as an example, right? There are companies that make commodity olive oil, and their focus is volume, right? And so, you know, it just really depends, and you have to know the brand, you have to do research on the brand, understand that. The likelihood is if you're really into wanting to get really high quality olive oils, you know, you want to go to a place like, we have good stuff in our stores. But if you really want to get into it, you want to go to like one of our field department stores, talk to the group there, because, you know, we have a food buyer, Wendy, and she does a great job. And that's all she sits around thinking about is like, ooh, who has the best olive oil? And so that you benefit from that from her, okay? So I have my oven is preheating. I have all of our bits and pieces here, and I'm gonna scrape all of that happiness here onto the so we can capture that, and then we'll throw it in I'm gonna say about 15 minutes. You know, when you're doing this at home, you want to check them every so often, but I'll probably get sidetracked. We'll be talking story and I'll forget, and then 15 minutes later we'll see what happens. So I'm putting it in the oven here. I'm gonna turn the timer down to 15 minutes, and I think that should be good for us. Now we're gonna move on to the ahi. I have a pan here that's been warming up on low, and I'm gonna try and make sure that it doesn't get too hot. But I think that's the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna sear this piece of ahi, and this is a really nice piece of you know, sashimi grain. This is an ahi block. It's from the center cut. We had our seafood guys cut this for me this morning, and it's really beautiful. This is local ahi #2 grade, and we're gonna blacken it. Now, you could totally just do this and, you know, make it sashimi style, or you could just sear it by seasoning with salt and pepper. I think blackening is a fun thing to do. I think it was very popular, I would say, in the late 80s into the early 90s, but it's still one of those things that when you have it, it's really delicious. And I said to use, you know, this is what I'm using is Chef Paul Prudhomme's blackening spice. And he made this blackening very popular. He really brought it on the scene by blackening redfish in New Orleans, blackened fish. We started doing it with ahi here. You can also do it with togarashi or shichimi spice. That's another option that you can do. But basically the stuff that's in here is oregano, cayenne, paprika, or onion salt, garlic salt. And so it's this really interesting spice and it blend. And we're gonna go ahead and blacken this. And what we're trying to do is I want it to be raw on the inside, but I just want to just char the outside because that kind of interesting bitterness is gonna really kind of help with the cut some of the richness that we're gonna have from the dressing that we're gonna make. So for starters, this has been sitting out for a little bit. I didn't want it to be ice cold because we're gonna put butter on it. And if I put the butter on this is ice cold, it would solidify and then then it'd be very challenging to work with. So I'm just gonna put a thin layer on here.
Can you use a different grade of ahi? And how many different grades are there?
You know, I think it depends on the fish houses, but usually there's like number 1, number 2, you go number 3 sometimes. And they also, some places go like, they grade it on a plus and minus. So you might get a 2, 2 plus, 2, and then down to a 3. And then you start moving into what's called fry grade. Some people call it, there's also poke grade and then fry grade. And so number 1 is the best typically. And as you go to 2, you know, 1 and 1, then 2 plus 2, then 2, 3. Some people call it 3 poke grade, and then you're moving into fry grade. And this really depends on the color and the fat content. In my opinion, you could probably use a regular ahi that you're gonna look in the store, but what you want to look for is something that has nice as bright red color as possible, because you're gonna sear this medium rare or rare, and you're gonna slice it. So you're gonna slice it, you want it to have that nice bright red color, and that freshness is there, right? If you want to fry it all the way and you don't want this rare thing, then yeah, you can use a lesser grade, okay? But that's totally up to you. If you're gonna do sashimi style, then I would say use sashimi grade. So I'm gonna go ahead and season this. And the reason I buttered it first is because I want the seasoning to kind of stick on here. And then I'm gonna flip it on this thing here. And then I'm gonna do the other side.
Can you explain blackened? Does that mean charred or does that mean burned?
Yeah, that's cool, right? Like, that's funny because yeah, it's like technically it's like it is burnt, and so like hats off to Chef Prudhomme. He figured out how to burn food and make lots of money doing it. But yes, blackening is burning it technically. You're taking the spices, we're gonna put them in the pan till they turn black. And so it's like the idea of charring, right? And you know, for the longest time when I was learning how to cook, Europeans were like, black is bad because it's bitter. Grilling is bad. You know, we were always sauteing, lightly caramelizing. And the idea of this very aggressive cooking technique, barbecue, all of that was like, ooh, that's, you know. So I think the US and our culture, part of what we've done is really evolve cooking styles. And so this Cajun technique of cooking was very interesting because we brought to what Chef Prudhomme brought to the food scene, and even and fine dining food scene, the idea that something that was considered charred or black is going to be delicious. And now when you think about it, charred, blackening, Brussels sprouts, think of all those things, and that's like, it's commonplace. But back in the day,
Why did you use butter? Could you use oil or could you use an egg to hold the seasoning on the fish?
You could use oil, but the thing that I would not get if I used oil was, notice when I laid the butter on here, I was able to put a thin layer of it. If I put oil on here, it would coat it, but it wouldn't be quite as thick. So if you have that, you could use it. Technically also, you could just take this and dredge it in the spices. But what you'll see is when I put this in the pan, as soon as I put it in the pan, it'll start to char, but then the fat from the butter will then start to melt, and then it will start to sear, and it's all happening at the same time. If I use oil, I'm not getting enough of that fat layer that's on there that I'm looking for. And so the other thing is the butter has milk solids in there, which also add to a layer of complexity in the flavor of the searing technique that you're gonna see here, okay? So this is very hot. It may flame, we'll see, because this is really hot. If it does, I might throw the pan on here and I might get a lot of smoke. So you might see me do some different things to try to manage the smoke. You'll see how much smoke this creates. And when you do this at home, if you don't want that much smoke, you might have to go get a butane burner and do it outside, okay? But it's a very quick process here, okay? Let's see how hot it is. I'll turn the fan on.
Did you use salted or unsalted butter?
I used unsalted butter.
And could you use mayonnaise instead?
Interesting idea. You could probably use mayonnaise because it would give that same coating that we're talking about here, but the flavor is different because you won't have the milk solids.
Can you use a different kind of fish? Like opah or salmon?
You could use salmon. Anything you would eat sashimi style, you could use. I like using the ahi because it's nice and meaty, and it has a nice oily texture. But whatever you would eat sashimi with, you can get away with doing this. You see how it's blackened now? Now the interesting thing is, typically blackening is associated with burnt, like I said, like, ooh, it's burnt. But it smells delicious because you're smelling the herbs, the dried herbs, the paprika, the garlic, and the onion powder, and all of it's coming together now. And it smells delicious and not offensive. But you see how it is black, right? And you see the smoke that we're creating. And again, if you wanted to, you could brown the edges too. I'm gonna just take it out. See how it's black on both sides? And that's really, I'm gonna put it back on here. But that's it. That's all we're looking for. Okay. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cover the pan to try to capture whatever grease is in there or smoke. But this is what we're gonna do. We're having that and we're gonna let it rest. So essentially it's still sashimi grade, very thin layer of searing on each side. And when we slice into it, you'll see what that looks like, okay? So we'll let that rest. Can you
tell us again, as soon as it turns black, that's when you turn it over? Like, how did you know it was done, or how did you know when to turn it over?
I would say 30 seconds to a minute. And yeah, when it's really, really black and you see this very thin, you see how, when you see this layer, you see how there's a very thin layer of crust on there and most of it's still rare on the inside? That's what you're looking for. But it's been about 30 seconds to a minute. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the lettuce because I want to let it dry out. So I have a romaine heart, and you can buy regular romaine, but typically if you're gonna buy regular romaine, you gotta peel leaves on. I buy the hearts because I want to get to the tender pieces. And if you notice, see here, this is dark green and this is light green, right? So when we're cooking, light green into white is mild. Darker green tends to be bitter. And so, you know, when you're looking for making a salad, here, look at this right here. All this stuff here is going to be quote unquote milder or sweeter or less bitter. And this is going to, the darker the green is going to be more bitter. Now you can use all of it. If you're in a fine dining restaurant, you're probably cutting it off here and only using this because you're looking for very delicate flavor. But I'm going to use the whole thing, okay? And so I'm going to cut it down the center. And I'm going to turn it halfway and cut it down one more time down the center. So basically I've quartered this romaine and I'm keeping the stem on. Then I'm just going to go ahead and cut it into pieces that I would consider bite-sized.
Keoni, is there a reason you didn't char the sides of the fish?
Yeah, I just didn't. If you want to, you can. I was like, that's a personal preference. I could have. And to that point, if you wanted to do that, you could put butter on sides and also put blackened spice on both sides. So if you wanted to do both sides, then when you slice it, you'd have that nice kind of like band around it. In this version I want to make, you're going to just see sear, raw fish, sear. That's again personal. It's all about how you want to approach what you're going to be making. So I'm going to wash this real quick. And then we're going to dry it. So I wanted to give it time to dry. So let me just wash it real quick here. And this is the thing that I wanted to show you. So, you know, if you're trying to figure out like, what am I going to, you know, how do I how do I do a salad and wash it and not make sure that it's not like waterlogged? So first step is to drain it like this. And if you have a salad spinner, awesome. But then what I do is I'll just take this and then I have a really big, like a potato sack side towel. And then I'll just go ahead and pour it all in here. And what you're just trying to do is you're trying to get all of the excess moisture to kind of go into this. And I'm being gentle with it, but you see it's absorbing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just put it back in the colander so that it can sort of dry out and the towel is going to absorb. Now, this is something you can do ahead of time. You clean the dress, you clean the screens, you get them all nice and washed out, then the towel, then you put it back in the refrigerator so they can crisp up again. Okay, so, but I just want to show you that very quickly. Okay, so let's see, what do we have here? We have 2 minutes left on our croutons. Let's take a look at that. They're looking kind of nice, but I think they can use a little bit more color. So I'm going to turn the time on for 4 more minutes. Turn the fan off here. And then we're going to make the dressing. Okay, so this is the part that I think I'm super passionate about, and I really wanted to spend time showing you folks how to do. And this is why I wanted, it's quote unquote a simpler dish that we're doing, but I want to take time on this. So first of all, you can do this in a RoboCoupe or a food processor or a blender. You just have to be mindful of if you're using a food processor or a blender, you might have to double the batch because if you don't have enough product in there, it's hard to make and you lose a lot of it that gets stuck in the sides. The other thing you have to be mindful of is speed. What we're doing is we're making emulsification, and a food processor or a blender goes really fast, and they have blades in there and it shears really quickly, so it's cutting, right? And so from a molecular level, it goes so fast that you have to be mindful to make sure you might be going so fast that you actually don't emulsify because it doesn't catch everything that you want to. So those are things you need to be mindful of. I want to show you how to do this without those two because it's going to be slower and you can focus. But the other part I wanted to show it to you is because if you don't have any of those two pieces of equipment, you still can do this, right? So for starters, we have a bowl, a nice sized bowl that I can move around in here. And then we want to set this up because I don't want it to be moving around. So I have a wet side towel and I'm going to just kind of quickly twirl it. And then I'm going to put it down on the cutting board to make like a little band. And then I'm going to put my bowl in there. And so now it's going to hold it, okay? So that's very important. This is one of the things that like they teach us in cooking school, and it's like soup. It's like one of the things we use all the time. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start throwing some ingredients in here, and the order is up to you, but we'll just kind of go ahead and get these things going. I'm going to start by putting some garlic. I wasn't sure how much I wanted, but I think we're just going to put one. So this is a nice clove here. Again, I'm going to smash it. Chop it out. And these are all very important for the flavor that we're going to create. But the cool thing about all this stuff that we're putting in there too is going to help us because what we're making is an emulsified dressing. And what that means is we're taking essentially two liquids that do not like each other and we're forcing them to hang out and be friends. So we're taking oil and we're taking liquids or water, essentially water, and we're trying to make them from a molecular level hang out together. And all of these things that we're adding besides flavor are considered emulsifiers, and what they do is they're going to help get in the way of the two. So the oil and the water are like, I don't like you, I don't hang out with you, but then all these little things are going to get in the way and they're like, no, come here, and then so that's how you kind of get this thing to come together. Otherwise you'd have a broken dressing. Okay, so we're adding that in, garlic. We're going to add some Tabasco for flavor and emulsification. We're going to add some Worcestershire sauce, which also gives you umami and flavor. And I will apologize for somehow the anchovy chose not to be in the ingredient list, but was in the method. And anchovy is really important for making Caesar dressing. If you hate anchovies, you can make it without. You still have a good creamy garlic dressing, and that's what you're gonna have if you don't have the anchovies. I'm sorry. But if you have fish sauce at home, you can put some of that in there. And we have this dressing that we do for coffee bean and tea leaf, and it's a Caesar, it's a kale shrimp Caesar with nook cham dressing, and it's sort of like a fish sauce, interesting kind of take on Caesar dressing. So if you don't have the anchovies, you can totally do it that way. And let's check on the croutons. Ta-da! I think they look good. Okay, so now they're waiting for us. Ahi's waiting for us. Got to get the dressing done. So Worcestershire, Tabasco, garlic, salt. We're gonna throw in here. A pinch for seasoning. Pepper. And the other thing that's cool about this, I'm showing you how to do this, and it's like, you know, if you don't have a whisk and you have a fork, right, and you have a wooden bowl, then you're like high steakhouse, making it table side. We're gonna put an egg in, anchovy. So these are the anchovy fillets. I think that, to me, this dressing calls for a good amount. So I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 fillets in here, okay? And these are from our field, really delicious anchovies. We'll go ahead and just chop these up. If you have anchovy paste, that works good too. And depending on, you know, I like the occasional burst of an anchovy. I like to be like eating my Caesar salad, like, wow, I just bit into a piece of anchovy. If you don't like that, just, you gotta cut them up, chop them up much finer. But this dressing that we're making, this Caesar dressing, right, is also essentially the same thing as an aioli or a mayonnaise. And when you're thinking about a mayonnaise, right, you think about best foods, really, I'm gonna tell you the recipe for mayonnaise. It's 1 egg yolk, a little bit of mustard, some salt, pepper, a little vinegar, a dash of vinegar, and a cup of neutral flavored oil, emulsified. That's it. And when I went to cooking school, to me, the thought of learning how to make mayonnaise was like mind-blowing, because you see it on the shelf in a bottle, and then you make it, and then you realize it's like 4 ingredients or whatever. You're like, what? But, and it's delicious. So an aioli, which is very popular these days, is essentially a mayonnaise, but it's using olive oil, and it's using garlic, which makes it really delicious too. So we have all of these fun ingredients in here. I have to put mustard in here. Let me grab some mustard. Dijon mustard. Put some of that in there. And then we're gonna put an egg yolk in here. Now this was an interesting thing. I am gonna be using a non-pasteurized egg yolk because I couldn't find any, but we do sell these in our stores. It just happened that I guess everyone decided to wear pasteurized eggs this week. And I do at home when I make these, I do use non-pasteurized egg yolks. It's just a decision you're gonna have to make about whether or not the risk reward is worth it for you. You can buy non-pasteurized, you can use them. If you can't get the non-pasteurized and you don't want to take that risk, you can also just use mayonnaise and add a lot of these ingredients in there, and you have a very similar experience. It's not the same experience though, but similar. We just want the yolk. So you have to make sure that when you're gonna make this, there's someone in the family that's like all about egg whites, because then you can make them an egg white omelet for breakfast. Okay, so we have all of these ingredients. The interesting thing as I look at this is if I took this and I added it to some really finely diced fresh beef, I'd have beef tartare, which is kind of making me hungry. Okay, so we're going to stir this in. We're gonna kind of mix it together, okay? Now we're gonna start to emulsify oil. And in this recipe, I'm using extra virgin and regular olive oil. And a very specific reason, while I just talked about all the cool romantic things about extra virgin olive oil, when you're making a dressing like this, too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing. And so if you use only extra virgin olive oil, it may overpower the dressing. And in this example, I'm gonna do a little bit of both because I want that flavor, but I don't want too much of that flavor, okay? So we'll start with the extra virgin here. Now to make an emulsification, you have to keep this moving. And one of the things I want to show you is, you see how I'm holding the whisk? I'm not holding like this. I'm not holding it like this. I'm holding it like a pencil. The other thing I'm holding it like, if you're a drummer, I'm using the traditional hand grip, which is like this, right? And I'm gonna be using my wrist, and I'm very relaxed right here. I am not sweating. I think when you start to cook, you think like, you gotta go like this, and you're sweating. So I'm very relaxed. If I was not teaching class, I may have a glass of wine in this hand, and I may go back and forth between wine and oil.
Did you say that you're using extra virgin and virgin?
Sorry, extra virgin and regular. Sorry.
But you're both of those are extra virgin.
Shoot, I bought the wrong one. I grabbed the wrong one. I'm gonna put that down, and I'm gonna grab. Thanks for checking, everyone. That was us testing you. Here, I'm gonna use a neutral oil. I have peanut oil. I'm so mad. I was literally standing at the shelf looking at all of the labels today. And I'm like, okay, I gotta make sure I get a regular, and then I got the wrong one. Okay, so I'm gonna use neutral.
Is there a specific whisk that you like, or shape of the whisk
that
is best?
Yeah, it's a good question. See, that's why we're doing a simple dish. I've been an hour, and we haven't even made the dressing yet. So this is more like a balloon whisk. I forget what this is called, piano wire whisk, right? This one here, I mean, this one, the gauge of the wire is sort of closer, but this one's longer and it's more flexible. This one is stiffer and it's rounder. For this kind of an application, I like this kind of a whip because it easily goes into the bowl, and and I like the length of it because I can stand here and literally my wrist is just right here and it's not really moving, and I'm doing this, and I'm not exerting a whole lot of force, and I'm very relaxed. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. Okay. I'll start with my extra virgin olive oil, and I'll just drizzle very lightly.
Can you tell the difference in using a pasteurized versus non-pasteurized egg?
I think that the difference is negligible. There is probably a flavor difference if you're using a pasteurized egg versus a brown free range or cage-free egg. But if you're using a conventional egg, relatively, I don't think you're gonna find a much difference. When you see what's happening, the oil is starting to go into this, and you're seeing it's getting thick, and it's kind of getting lighter in color, right? Now, once you start to get a good emulsification, you can start to go faster. As you see how the stream is going, I'm going faster and faster, and it's thickening, right? But I don't want to see, if I started to see how that looks like it's broken, right? If that starts to get really, really predominant, that means I'm not emulsifying it and I got a problem. Yeah, like I'm starting to go fast now, right? Look at that. Look how fast I was going, but now it's going in. It's all going in. Now I'm going to start adding some of the neutral oil because I want to make sure that it's not overpowering. I can verify, right, that this is neutral.
Can you add acid or lemon, wine vinegar?
That's a great question. I forgot to. See? So I'm going to add some lemon here. Yes, you should. You have to.
What happens if it does break? Like, how do you fix that?
Yeah, and that happens too. Well, before I answer that question, I added lemon, and you can just add lemon, but I have recipes too that we do. Like one of the recipes we did at the Eiffel Tower restaurant in Las Vegas, the Paris Hotel, I used lemon and I used white wine vinegar too because I like the different layers of flavor that were in there. So you can experiment with your acids. So if you make this and it breaks or it doesn't come together, there's a couple things you can try to do. And they don't always work, but what you can try to do sometimes is add a little bit of water, and that helps to bring it together. Sometimes you can whisk it harder to get faster to try to like force. You're gonna force the oil and you're gonna force everyone to be friends, right? If you force that, sometimes that works. The other thing that you can do sometimes is you add another egg yolk into this thing, and that helps bring it back together. Ultimately, sometimes it just doesn't happen, and once you get to the irreconcilable differences, you just gotta like throw it out. Or you can serve it as a broken dressing, and you can tell everyone like, today we're having broken Caesar salad dressing, and it sounds cool. So.
Can you use an electric mixer to
And but I highly recommend that everyone try to do this by hand because, you know, it's a lot of work to bust out your electric mixer and all that stuff. So.
And then how long does this dressing last in the fridge?
That's your call. I think, in my opinion, it lasts, again, because you're dealing with white eggs, right? So I would say technically that everyone would probably say a couple days to a week or so. As long as your refrigerator is very cold and you haven't touched this with your fingers and contaminated it. So now that we have a nice meal here, I'm gonna taste it, see what the flavor is like. And it tastes good, but this is the part that we do as cooks and we make it taste amazing. So it needs more acid and it's too thick. The acid I'm gonna add here is gonna help to thin it out. I feel like it needs a little bit more heat. I want more umami in here, so I'm gonna add some more of the Worcestershire sauce. And I'm gonna stir that in. And it just needs a little more salt, I think. And I love pepper, so I'm gonna put some more of that in here. One thought that you might want to think about is because we're gonna blacken ahi would be cool too, is if you wanted to, you could throw some wasabi in here. A wasabi Caesar salad. Now, I'm going to, it's too thick, so I'm gonna adjust the consistency, and it's two ways you can adjust the consistency. One would be add more acid, but if the acid is right, you can go ahead and add a little bit of water to this. So I'm gonna just add some water to that. You see how it's coming together? It's nice and thinning out. It's still nice and creamy. I'm looking for something that's gonna be nice and creamy. It's gonna coat the green, okay?
Can you tell us what the name of your whisk is again? Like a piano whisk?
Oh, this is a piano. I think it's called a piano whisk because they're referencing the wire, so it's like piano wire texture. But when you go to the kitchen store, the fun thing is you go pick up the whisk and you can, like, I literally will go in. It's like, I don't know, if anyone here is a drummer, you'll totally get this. But like when I'm gonna pick drumsticks, I go in there and even if I use the same brand all the time, like I use 5A Zildjian Buddy Rich, right? I still have to go in there and pick them up and try them all because everyone's a little bit different. So go in, go touch all of the whisks, feel them, because you're gonna find one that balances a particular way that it feels good to you. So that's kind of what you want to do. Go play with them, touch them, and people will be like, "Wow, you were serious." You're like, "Yeah." So that is kind of a long piano wire, and the other one I was talking about is a round one. Is typically known as a balloon whisk. Okay. So now we're gonna do a salad. We're gonna bring this all together. So if there are any questions, now's a great time to ask them.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you sub out the raw egg yolk?
You can sub out the raw egg yolk for something like mayonnaise. I think you could use. I mean, you could experiment with doing something like Greek yogurt. Might be interesting. You know, you would just try something that's creamy. But you're not gonna have the completely same experience. But they're interesting substitutions that you can. You want something that's creamy, and you're gonna add garlic, Worcestershire. Well, you wouldn't if you're using yogurt. I wouldn't add lemon juice because it's already tart, right? But you add the Tabasco, all those ingredients, anchovies, stir it all up, and you could get probably pretty similar. But that's what I would do. And so now we're gonna make the salad, and I saved this bowl because it has olive oil, parsley, cheese, and guess what's gonna go in my salad? All those fun things. Okay, so the greens has, see now how they're nice and dry now? They're not shiny, but they're nice and dry too, right? Okay. Then I am going to add some of this dressing. About 2 ounces, what you want to do. 2 ounces is a quarter of a cup. 8 ounces to a cup. I'm gonna add some more pepper. I'm gonna actually throw some more parsley in here because I love that. Oh, and one of the things I want to show you. So, you know, you think about Caesar salad, romaine, Caesar salad romaine. I wanted to give you guys other things to think about because part of what we do here when we cook is we're exploring ideas, right? And you may have seen things out there these days, like you're seeing kale Caesar salads, which are really cool. But I thought would also be fun is I was in a store and I saw this organic grow baby bok choy, which is a super green, which I think is going to hold up nicely too. So I figured it'd be fun to do something different. And this is a pre-washed, so I'm going to throw some of that in there too, just for, you know, to change it up a little bit. Then I'm also going to put some grated cheese inside the salad. We'll go ahead and toss this. I'm looking for this to nicely coat the greens. I don't want it to be overdressed, but I want all of the greens should have some nice dressing. You should obviously see the dressing, but the greens, the lettuce leaves you should see through them. And you don't want, you see here, on the bottom here, I don't have a ton of dressing left over. It's just enough to coat the greens without overdressing and sopping them. So we'll go ahead and put it in a bowl here. And when I'm putting in the bowl, if you're gonna put this in a bowl and serve them like this, I'm letting the greens fall on top of themselves and I'm not hammering them. I'm not being hard on them. They're delicate and I'm letting them fall nicely and gently into the bowl. And that's what you wanna do, okay? Next thing we're gonna do is put more cheese because we're taking a very healthy salad and making it decadent. But this is good cheese, Parmesan cheese from the Reggiano region of Italy, okay? Putting it on there, which is looking good. You can also, if you want to, when we do these days, because people like their acidity, give them a little bit of a nice wedge there. And you see this, you see a lot of it these days. Before, okay, so maybe I should stop for a second. Before, traditionally, right, a Caesar salad, when you ordered it, would be greens like this with cheese, and then you have croutons. And that, I think, is very delicious already as is, right? But I think it'd also be cool if we were to take some really delicious, ripe, vibrant tomatoes. And, you know I use these a lot, but they're really good. I'm taking Whole Farms tomatoes. We're gonna throw some on there. And, you know, the burst of bright acidity with the creamy dressing, I think really, really adds a lot to what we're doing here. And again, you're taking something that already is delicious because you made this from scratch. You've added some different greens in there, but just little subtle flourishes really make the difference in taking something that was started out as a classic basic that was done well, and then you're starting to really kind of dress it up. And I'm adding a little bit of some more parsley leaves in here because I think one thing that is nice is that parsley is going to give, again, more bursts of the chlorophyll green flavor. And then we're going to go ahead and cut the ahi. Now you have to be careful when you're cutting the ahi, and you have to use a very sharp knife. Sometimes the serrated works because you created a crust here and you want to make sure that you're not tearing it up. So you have to kind of be careful with it, and you have to be delicate with it. But you see what we're looking at now? I'm just going to slice thin pieces of them.
How do you take care of your wooden cutting board? How do you care for it and clean it?
I actually don't take very good care of it, but what I do a lot is so I take the board, I scrub it all, I'm scrubbing it a lot, right? It's so beat up because it's got cuts in there and I bang on it. But the thing that I do is when I need to, I'll spray it with like a bleach solution to help kind of clean it out. And then I have, they have different oils that are designed for treating and conditioning the board here. So I have, the brand here is Booze Blocks, and they're like, everyone uses them in the kitchen, right? And Booze Blocks makes sort of a treating oil that every so often I will coat it and it kind of absorbs it and it kind of conditions it. But that's how, you can see, like I say, I don't take care of it because see all these stains I got here. Some of it's from like beet juice and stuff like that. And it is very scarred up. This board is very scarred up and dented. Okay, so we're gonna take this We'll layer it on top. And here we have our salad right here, $22.95. Made it at home for $6. But here's our dish, and you know, I think it was a simple dish in origin, but I think there are really important key things that I wanted to show you folks, right? How to make really delicious croutons that you can use all the time for all your different dishes. I wanted to show you the searing process or blackening of the ahi, which you can do for a myriad of different things. Like you'd be great with an avocado tomato relish, or a corn salsa, or like amazing salad, or by itself with like shoyu mustard butter sauce. You know, think about all those things. And then the Caesar dressing, which I think if you learn how to make it this way, this will be another one of those things. I'm trying to show you all the different things that I think that you should learn and have in your repertoire, because when people come over, or whether or you're just doing it for yourself or with your family, right? These are the little things that done properly are just really delightful. So I hope you folks had, I hope you learned something. We had fun, and we talked about some cool stuff. But that's our dish here. We will be trying to decide what we're going to be talking about for next week. I'm thinking it might be fun to think of some things that you can make in batches and freeze so you can share with friends and family. So we'll get those recipes out, or the ingredients out for everyone. But here's the salad.
Pete wants to know wine suggestions for this dish.
Good question. You know, when I'm looking at something like this, because you have a nice kind of a meaty ahi, and it's got that aggressive blackening, and you've got the anchovies in there, and you've got a creamy dressing and garlic. I would say, well, anything from the Mediterranean regions would work. I would say a nice California Sauv Blanc would work, because that Sauv Blanc grape from California is going to be from a warmer climate, which is going to give you a richer Sauv Blanc. I would say a really crisp Chardonnay would be delicious. If you really wanted to go into reds, I would say you could easily get a rosé and have a delicious time with this. But if you're gonna go red, I would say probably stick something like a thin skin grape like Pinot Noir, and you want to try to find one that's a lighter style, you know, from a region that has really high acidity. Sonoma Pinot Noir would be interesting. Maybe something from Willamette Valley in Oregon would be cool. Of course, anything French would be delicious, but you want something that's crisp, high acid with this, but is not so light that it's drowned out by the richness of the dressing and the garlic and all of the different aggressive flavors that you're getting from the blackening spice. And a cool beer, like a pale ale would be good too, you know. So that'd be fun.
Okay, final question.
Final question.
If you're making whipped cream, would you use the balloon whisk or the piano whisk?
Both of them would work fine. Personally, I really like this whisk here, and I would use it for whipped cream because I like that it bends into the bowl. Sometimes the balloon whisk are stiff, right? And you can't really get it to work in the bowl. So both would work. It comes down to preference, but I would find, whether it's a balloon or the narrow one that I have here, find one that has a nice give so that when you need to get it down into form to grab the sides of the bowl, it will capture the side of the bowl. And with that, I hope you guys had fun. Like I said, we'll get you guys out the ingredients and the dish for next week shortly. And if you have any other questions that pop into your head, please email them to us, because we get back to everyone about the follow-up questions. So hope you had fun, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye now.